All right. Welcome to those of you joining us here. We will be talking about in this room today exploring pathways to healthcare. And we are joined with Megan Mankarian from Creighton University. And she's going to go ahead and take it away. Thanks so much for being here, Megan.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and chat with you guys more about what does it look like to study healthcare in the US, especially thinking about maybe that medical track. What are some up and coming areas and different pathways and opportunities for you guys? It is very different in America than most other countries, and it's a very interesting selection process. So, let's go through what some of that looks like for you and some other areas that you could also be thinking about. So, first, I do want to recognize that it is a very confusing system. This is one of those times where, I talk to students all the time. They're like, yeah, I just tried to Google, studying medicine in the US. And it's so easy to get lost in one of those black holes where you think it's been 5 minutes, it's been 2 hours. These are some of the terms that may have come up. You get very confused on what any of this means. So I'm hoping that over the next little while, I can help clarify what all of this actually would mean for you. So first, I do want to look at the traditional pathways. These are the oldest pathways, the most popular ones that students ask us about. So it would be medicine, dentistry, and pharmacy. So these are all going to be a two-part process. First, you're going to do your bachelor's degree. You're going to do that pre-healthcare track plus your major subject. Then you take those entrance exams and then you go to the professional school afterwards. This track is generally going to be 6 to 8 years long, depending on the program. So, for example, let's say you are thinking about that medicine track. So, you would actually be applying for a bachelor's degree in any major you want. Most students will pick a science because generally you're going to pick something you enjoy studying. But you can pick anything from business to arts, humanities, social sciences. But let's say you decide you love the hard sciences, so you decide you pick biology. So you would actually study biology as your major, and then you would do pre medicine as your track that you would do with it. Between your third and fourth year, that's when you're going to take the MCAT, that's the medical admissions test. And then you apply for medical school after that, which then is another 4 years. So that is a 4 plus 4, 8 years. You might see some BSMD, so it's the combined bachelor's medical program that exists. Those are still going to be 7 to 8 years, but here's the thing about those programs. Number one, they're very difficult to find. Number two, they're incredibly competitive to get into. Number three, most of them do not consider international students. So if you are not a US citizen, those specific types of programs are going to be very difficult. So, really thinking about this traditional pathway where you're looking at the 4 plus 4 gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of time to really decide if this is what you want to do, and then go on to that professional school from there. So, one question I'm often asked is what does that pre healthcare track include? What exactly is it? If I am that biology pre medicine student, what actually is pre medicine? So, it is the set of prerequisite courses that you have to take to be eligible to apply for those professional programs. It's going to be a certain level of sciences, so usually 2 years of biology with labs, 2 to 3 years of chemistry with labs, physics, a certain level of maths, social sciences like sociology and psychology, English composition, and then sometimes one or two other humanities courses. Plus, you have to be heavily involved in extracurricular activities, such as internships, research, volunteering, job shadowing. And I am going to talk a little bit about that more in depth later on. So, some other pathways that exist that are a little bit similar, but not quite as popular, doesn't mean they're not as cool, just not quite as popular as those traditional ones. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, physician's assisted, and rehabilitation sciences. They're a similar process, like I said, to those traditional programs where you do your bachelor's degree first and then go into the professional school. But for a lot of these programs, they are less time because the professional program is shorter. So, for example, physician's assistant is only 2 years. And some of them have combined options, which means you could do your bachelor's plus your, for example, doctoral level occupational therapy. in closer to 6 years, which is really nice. A lot of them don't also have that residency requirement, which I will talk about residency later on as well. So you could begin working in the field right away. There are some challenges to some of these programs, though. So some of them are newer that don't exist as robustly outside of the US. So, for example, that physician's assistant program, basically, this program allows you to be very, very similar to what a doctor does, and you work under a doctor. It is a huge growing program in the US and in about 14, 15 countries around the world. But depending on where you want to be long term, it may not be a degree that really translates to another country. Another thing is that the degree level may differ from country to country. So, for example, physical therapy is a good one for this. So, in the US, to be a physical therapist, you have to do the full doctoral program, which is a 3 year program. But there are some countries where you only need to do a 2 year program, which would be our rehabilitation sciences program. So, once again, you just have to think long term, where do you want to be and which program do you want to do? And then the last one, many of these programs do not accept international students right now. So this is because a lot of universities are continuing to add these programs as students start to shift away a little bit from those traditional programs and look at some of these other fields. But their accreditation does say that you have to have 5 years of graduating students before you can start accepting international students. So the list you would see today will be different in a year, in 2 years, and 3 years. So just know that it may be a shorter list right now, but by the time you go to apply for any of these programs, there'll be a lot more options. So, one of the things that I often hear from students is, well, I want to work in healthcare, therefore I need to be a doctor or I need to be a pharmacist. But the reality is, the world of healthcare is massive. There are so many different career fields to go into right now, especially coming out of the pandemic. And we've seen a lot of shifts in this field. So, one, of course, nursing is a standard program. It's great because you could become a nurse in 4 years. You only need your bachelor's degree. It is an incredibly high demand right now in the US. So it's definitely an option to look into. Then we're also seeing a lot of different areas of allied health, things like nutrition, exercise science, health coaching, especially those fields where we start to look at healthcare more as wellness and not just traditional healthcare. So really understanding, what does movement mean in our lives? What does nutrition really mean in our lives? So it's really cool to kind of see some of these shifts. But we're also seeing a lot more demand for programs such as emergency medical services, public health. I think this was a big one, especially in America, as we were not prepared for a pandemic. I'm not sure many countries were fully prepared for a pandemic, but there was definitely a big disconnect between what the government was saying and what people were doing, and really having those people in public health who could help be that middle person to help the general population understand why are immunizations important? Why is masking important? Um, and really kind of helping in that regard. And then everything we're seeing a lot more students really looking at things like genetic counseling, which you're not going to necessarily find on the bachelor's degree level, but you could do biochemistry and then get your master's or PhD in genetic counseling. To things such as looking more at biomedical engineering and how do we build better prosthetics for people. So it is really, really cool to see how this area is changing. But one of the best things about how the system is set up in the US is, I know from that first slide, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, medicine is 8 years, it's 4 plus 4. But part of why it's set up this way is so that in your first 4 years, you actually get to explore all of these different fields. And if at the end of the day you decide going to medical school is not necessarily the right path for you, but you've now found neuroscience and fell in love with it gives you that flexibility to easily change programs. Or if you think, wow, I didn't even know what speech pathology was, but it is so cool and you want to shift in that, it really gives you that flexibility and that freedom. One area that really does not get talked about enough, but is a really, really cool crossroads, is healthcare and business. I have a lot of students who come to me and say, Miss Megan, I really want to work in healthcare, but my parents own a business, or vice versa. My parents want me to go into healthcare, but I'm really interested in business. You actually don't have to pick one or the other. You can combine these programs. So one of the most popular one is going to be healthcare leadership or health administration, sometimes called healthcare administration and leadership. Depends on the university and how they've decided to name the program. But this is a really great program for people who are really interested in healthcare and love the complexities of it. It leads to a high paying career for people who end up running hospitals and healthcare systems or work in government health. These people really specialize in understanding how do you maximize patient care? How do you make sure your doctors and nurses and staff are all taken care of? To how do you handle insurance companies, which is a big issue in the US, plus managing government expectations and making sure that you're making money to keep the lights on and make sure you keep your hospital running. So, it does take a very special type of person, but if you love to really deal with a lot of moving pieces in kind of a fast-paced work environment and really want to work in healthcare, it could be a great area for you. Data, as we know, is growing in every area. Healthcare is no different. So, seeing a lot more opportunities in health information systems, healthcare data analysts. We're seeing so many new startups that deal in healthcare. So, we actually have a lot of students who will go into programs such as our business intelligence and analytics, but then focus their internships and their research in the healthcare field and go into some really, really cool healthcare startups. Is a very popular one. And then medical pharmaceutical sales, healthcare marketing. A lot of people think that the only job in this is really pharmaceutical sales, where you work for a pharmaceutical company and you go visit different doctors' offices and try to talk to them about some of the newest drugs on the field. It is one role in this area, but not the only one. My friend actually, I think, has one of the coolest jobs in this area. So she actually works for the company that invented the surgical robot. And her job is as they continue to develop new techniques and new additions to that robot, she learns at the company, she goes to the training sessions, and then she spends times working with the surgeons and in surgery, helping to support them as they learn these two new techniques and processes. So she doesn't directly work in patient care, but she gets to be that really cool in between person, which is such a unique job and field. So, a lot of questions I'm often asked is, well, what if I decide to stay in my home country and study medicine or dentistry, especially if you are somewhere where you have that opportunity to study it on the undergraduate level? What can you do if you want to come to the US after that? So, of course, a very popular option is looking at master's or PhD opportunities. A lot of people will go into research, public health, or that education professor. But there is the option as well of thinking about, well, what if I get my medical degree in Canada and then I want to work in the US? How would this work? So, you do have to complete the residency program in order to get your full US medical license. The way this works is you do have to complete the STEP exams. These are a series of 3 exams that you take over several months. And these exams are the same exact exams that students actually take in medical school here. So the way it works is you can only take the second exam if you've passed the first, and then the third exam once you pass the first two. And they're very stressful exams, of course. They currently cost around about 2,600 US dollars. And then once you pass those exams, then you can apply for residency in the US. Residency is going to be 3 to 8 years long, depending on your field. So, for example, if you're thinking about being a general family practitioner or an emergency room physician, your residency may be closer to 3 to 4 years. Whereas if you're thinking about being a surgeon, it's going to be closer to that 8 years. One of the very interesting things right now, and this is a relatively big shift within the last couple of years coming out of the pandemic, is that residency is highly, highly competitive now. There are more students graduating medical school in the US alone than there are residency spots available. So it is very, very difficult. And you have 2 years from when you've passed the final step exams to get placed into a residency. In 2021, on average, medical students applied to 70 open residency positions just in order to get one job, basically. Uh, So like I said, it's highly, highly competitive. It's a very long process and very stressful. So this is one of those areas where I tell students you really have to think about the pros and cons about if you are thinking the medical track and if you are considering doing that in the US, what is going to be the best opportunity here? Because they're also the other reality is that medical school in the US is to get in is already very competitive and also a very expensive pathway. So thinking long term, what could be the best opportunity here? And then you may have also heard of fellowships, which is comes towards the end of your residency. And this is if you decide to specialize in a field, and it adds on additional time to your residency. So, what are things that you could be doing now as a high school student who might be thinking about studying healthcare? So, some of the big things are getting involved in job shadowing. This is a great way to understand different careers and roles. So, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. So, when I was in high school, I was also thinking about going to medical school. My dad was actually born in the Middle East. He was born in Beirut, Lebanon. So, growing up, I had three career options I could pick from. I could either be a lawyer, an engineer, or a doctor. So, I was always on the doctor pathway. And then when I was in high school, I had the great opportunity to be able to job shadow a couple different types of doctors. I spent a lot of time with a general family practitioner, which was great. I learned a lot about, you have to learn a lot of different medicine because he worked with everybody from infants all the way through older people. And so I wasn't sure if that was really the area I wanted to go in. Then there was another type of doctor that I job shadowed that I spent one full day with him and realized that job was not what I thought it was at all. And I knew I definitely did not want to do that. So it was definitely a great way for you to start thinking about different job opportunities and what might be a good fit for you. Internships are usually great because those are going to be a little bit more of those hands on opportunities. Sometimes they're paid as well, which is awesome. And then volunteering is another way to, not only have that hands on opportunity, but also really give back in the community. And these types of things really stand out in your university applications, but also your professional school applications. And then the last thing, which I think is the most important, and it's actually exactly what you're here doing tonight, start researching universities and various opportunities on their campuses to support your goals. This is really important, especially if you're looking at healthcare. If you're looking at the US alone, there's over 4,000 universities. So it's already a ton to start looking through and thinking through. If you are thinking about going into healthcare, and especially, for example, if you're thinking about, that medicine pathway, 90% of universities that you ask if they have a pre medicine program, they're going to say yes. That doesn't really help you narrow down the list at all. What the reality is that while many universities have pre medicine, pre dentistry, pre pharmacy, anything like that, it doesn't mean that they're a strong program, especially for international students. So, this is really where I say you have to start to getting comfortable asking universities the tough questions, asking them specifically things like, what is the rate of your international students getting into medical school or dental or pharmacy school? What do you do specifically to support your international students in these pathways? Because it is more competitive for international students. What do you do to help your students prepare for those entrance exams that I talked about earlier? If universities aren't able to give you a straight answer or they beat around the bush at all, that's a pretty good indication that it's probably not going to be a good fit for you, and you move on to the next university. Like I said, there's over 4,000 of us, so you will definitely find universities that are going to be a good fit, but it does mean taking the time and asking universities some of these tough questions. So, with that, I am going to ask myself some of these tough questions for you, and you can definitely come chat with me at my booth afterwards for more details. But at my university, Creighton University, which is located in Omaha, Nebraska, we were actually started as a science and medical university about 150 years ago. So healthcare is actually what we're best known for. We have programs in medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, physician's assistant, nursing, and health administration, as well as if you actually also want to go into the law school side, we have that as well. When it comes to our undergraduate students getting into professional programs, our students tend to do very well For example, in medicine, thinking about that in particular, the national average of admission is about 30% to medical school. Our pre medicine students, generally every year, over 70% are admitted to medical school. Of our international students, it's actually higher than that because many choose to stay in our medical school. And our medical school is one of the 40 that does accept international students. We are also the only university in the US with two medical schools. We have one at our home campus in Omaha, and we also have a second one in Phoenix, Arizona. This is my contact information. We definitely have time for Q&A right now. Like I said, you could also hop over and chat with me in my booth afterwards. But there's always, that time later tonight or next week or next month when you think, dang, I should have asked that lady, the specific question. So make sure to note down my email address. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see what kinds of questions you guys have. Oh, I love that top tips were put into the chat. But don't be shy. Definitely ask any questions that you guys have right now.
Yeah, we do. We've got a good group here. Oh, good. We've got a question that's come through. Other than volunteering and extracurriculars, what can I do in high school? Uh, should I be taking more science courses? Should I try something else that would help me once I graduate?
So, honestly, what I would say, definitely take a couple science classes because you're going to need that knowledge for when you go to university. Your first year science classes will be some of the hardest science classes you take, especially chemistry. A lot of students tell me, oh, I should take biology over chemistry. No, chemistry is your hardest class, so definitely take chemistry. But beyond that, definitely take a variety of courses because, like I said, when talking about those pre healthcare tracks, that's a variety of courses as well. Plus, you get to pick your major. So it could be that maybe you absolutely love English and maybe you love British literature in particular. So you decide that you're going to major in British literature, but do pre medicine, and that's totally acceptable. And one of the really cool things about studying healthcare in the US. So have some of those foundation courses, but definitely don't be scared to explore different areas.
Yeah, and I would say, go ahead and work with Education USA to help with, asking more specifics about your involvements if you want kind of more advice. Um, but usually, because the pre-medical track, as Megan was explaining, is kind of any course of study that you would like in university. There's no one thing you need to do to prepare for your undergraduate degree and for admissions. All right, the questions are coming in now, Megan. I'll let you take them
Yeah.
on.
So for nursing, is it direct admission or a two-step process? You'll see both. So there are two types of nursing programs in the US. One that's a direct admit program, which is what we have at my university, where when you apply for Creighton Nursing, you're admitted directly into the College of Nursing, into the nursing program. In first semester, you start taking your nursing courses. But you will also see programs that are pre-nursing programs, where really in your first year or two, you take nursing foundation classes, and assuming that you do well in those classes, then they move you into the nursing program. One program is not better than another, they're just different, and you have to decide what kind of program you want to be in. I always say direct admit nursing is perfect for students who know 100% with every fiber of your being that nursing is what you want to do. Go for a direct admit program. But if you think nursing might be an option for you, but you're not 100% sure, that two-step process might be a better option for you because it'll give you a little bit more flexibility. So for dentistry, so can I talk a little bit more about dentistry? Does my university have a combined undergrad dental program? An advantage to my program in particular. So for dentistry, it's still a very separate two-step process. You're going to do your bachelor's degree, and then you're going to apply for dental school. It's not combined at my university. I will tell you our professional programs, including dentistry and medicine, preference our undergraduates first. So, how this works, if you're applying to our dental school and you did your bachelor's degree with us, They look at the Creighton applications first before they look at outside applications. So our students do very, very well getting into our dental program. Our School of Dentistry in particular, the building is brand new. It is absolutely gorgeous. And inside that, we also host a dental clinic for low-income families that live around the university. So not only as an undergraduate student can you get some really cool hands-on experiences and job shadowing right on campus with this, it's also great that right within the college itself, as you're studying to be a dentist, you also really get that hands-on experience right away. Are you able to transfer from one university to another for medical school internationally?
And
This is where it becomes
yeah, I'll
very
jump in. I'm going to jump in because I have a feeling the student means can you do your bachelor's degree in Canada and then do a medical degree in the United States?
so it is very, very tough. This goes back to the slide where I was talking about taking the step exams and really thinking about what you want to do. Could you theoretically do your bachelor's degree in biology in Canada and apply for medical school in the US? Yes, but I will tell you, I believe it is less than 5 medical schools in the US that will consider a bachelor's degree from another country. So you have to really think long term here. If you know that medical school in the US is really where you want to end up, to have the greatest chance of getting admitted to medical school, you should probably consider doing your bachelor's degree in the US as well. Do you still have
And
to write the
yeah.
DAT? Oh, go
Oh,
ahead. Sorry.
sorry. I'll jump in on that one. And while that's true for countries outside of Canada, there are a good number of universities that will accept both an undergrad from either US or Canada. So that's just something to review and pay close attention to. So it is possible, but like Megan's saying, it's incredibly competitive, and so it does present an additional challenge. But just Canadian undergraduate is more broad than 5 universities. Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Do you still have to write the DAT to get admission? So this is going to depend because we have 2 pathways into our dental school. We do have a guaranteed pathway where you do not have to take the DAT, but it is very competitive that you would actually apply for during high school. And then the traditional pathway, which is the 4+4, where you would take the DAT. Great questions.
All right, things seem to be slowing down here. Oh, we got one more. What are the requirements
Ooh,
to
okay.
go into path one, not the traditional path?
So we have this very specialized program called, ooh, it's a long name, so let's hope I get it right. The Creighton Pre-Professional Scholars Program, CPPSP. We do go off your GPA or percentage, depending on what type of program you're in. Um, and some of the programs do require that you take the SAT to be eligible. So I will also preference this. What happens is when you are applying for admission for Creighton, if you have a high enough GPA or percentage plus that SAT score, you are eligible to apply for our CPPSP program. It is an interview process plus an additional essay plus an additional letter of recommendation. And then, depending on the program, because we have it for medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, and I think occupational therapy right now. Some of them are a guaranteed admission as long as you keep your university GPA at a certain level. Some are still going to be that two-step process, but give you a little bit more advantage in that two-step process.
And there was a question that came in on the Q&A. I'm interested in physiotherapy. What undergraduate program would be best?
Anything you want. That's the beauty of it. Is there's really no best program. I will say one of the more popular programs for physical therapy is exercise science or kinesiology. but really you can study whatever you want. If you want to study history or business, you can do that, which is really awesome. And then we had another question in the chat. How much is medical school? The big question. So medical school per year ranges anywhere from about $70,000 to $90,000 or $100,000 per year. It is incredibly expensive, and there are little to no scholarships for it. That's because it is so competitive that they know that people will pay full price. So it is definitely one of those long-term things that you have to think about to figure out the affordability piece. One of the things that I do tell students, especially if you're coming to the US on your student visa, you have the ability, once you complete your bachelor's degree, to do your OPT, your optional practical training. Depending on what degree you get, it's either going to be 12 months that you have or 3 years. It is actually very common for students to not go directly from undergraduate studies into professional school. Last year, the average age of students entering medical school was actually 27. So, one of the things that you get the ability to do is once you graduate your bachelor's degree, you can work for, like I said, depending on your degree, 1 year or 3 years, get work experience, save money, and then think about going to professional school after that. Another popular option is to go into a master's degree first and then go into the professional school. And once again, it gives you the ability to earn money that way as well, because between your bachelor's degree and master's degree, you can do your OPT. And then between your master's degree and professional school, you can do OPT again. So it does give you some time to earn some money to help pay for that as well. What is the cost of dental school? It's a little less than that. Usually it's around $60,000 to $80,000 depending on the university. And for some universities, they do have scholarships. It's not quite as competitive as medical school.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up since we're at the time, but please keep the conversation going. Head over to the booth, keep talking to Megan at the Crichton booth and ask more questions, and also go visit the other universities. A lot of them have health-based programs that you might be interested in.
Go
So
ask them
thank
the
you
tough
again.
questions.
Yeah, ask her the tough questions. Ask everyone the tough questions. If you go to the emojis, you can clap for Megan. So everybody, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. There it is. Yes. All right. And enjoy your conversations in the booth. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.